Hey there! Have you ever wanted to see what happened to Father Grigori after Freeman left him behind, but set in the Half-Life 2 beta? Well, a brand new mod just hit the Half-Life community, one of pretty high quality. Most of you have probably heard about Raising the Bar Redux before. It's a mod aiming to recreate the Half-Life 2 beta. I will cover this mod someday as well, but today, taking a look at a spin-off mod of it, Raising the Bar Salvation. This is one of two announced spin-off mods of Raising the Bar. It does exactly what I mentioned and continues the story of Father Grigori. The other spin-off is called Triumph and will basically be a Half-Life 2 beta version of Portal from what it seems. I will be sure to cover that one as well when it releases. Both these spin-offs were only announced 4 months ago, which makes this probably the quickest announcement to release Half-Life mod ever. In this video I will be summarizing, reviewing and analyzing Salvation. Half-Life Alyx spoiler timestamps can be found in the description. So let's get right into it. Before we do that, make sure to subscribe and to join the Discord. So to start off, let's take a look at the menu real quick, as I think it does a pretty cute thing. The difficulty settings have been, for lack of a better term, Grigorified. They sound like things Father Grigori would say. Normal, you and your flock are evenly matched. Hard, Ravenholm rests for no man, you are on borrowed time. Deathless, you have only one life with which to succeed. And then there's extra description which I'll get to in a second. You might also notice how there is no easy difficulty. There is only normal, hard and deathless. Deathless actually being something that I've never seen before in a Half-Life mod. It's exactly what the name leads you to believe. If you die, you have to restart. Basically Minecraft hardcore about Half-Life. No! This is part of the leading theme of this mod, which is that it's a pretty hard one. You're supposed to feel like you're barely surviving in this town and that it is there to kill you. This is also introduced in a skippable intro. Salvation is a challenging experience intended for RTBR veterans, short for Raising the Bar Redux, the mod that this mod is a spin-off of. You must scavenge and conserve resources to survive. You cannot hope to slay them all. Master Ravenholm and its secrets. Only then will you succeed. On Deathless you will only get one try. Death or reloading a save will restart your run. Fight to win, fight to survive. I believe this will be an incredibly interesting concept, one that I also recommend each of you to go and try out for yourself after watching this video. And truly only then. And before I get into the full-on gameplay, I do want to note that this mod released not even a week ago at the point of me writing this, and is more than likely to iron out some things I'll mention in this video. It still is incredibly polished for a first version though. So let's go back to what happened before this mod first. The Raising the Bar Redux version of Ravenholm ends in Gordon fending off Father Grigori as he starts a generator in what is somewhat similar to Left 4 Dead kind of gameplay. We even receive Annabelle to do this. We then enter the elevator, are forced to give Annabelle back to Father Grigori, and then you see him running off laughing where you descend down to the mines.
Now, be gone! This town is not your grave, and no longer are you welcomed in it. By the light of lights, we may meet again someday.
Salvation picks up right at this point. As the start is missing Grigori running off laughing and also features a different monologue, this sadly breaks the continuity, and thus I have to give this mod a 0 out of 10. Father Grigori starts off with a monologue of wanting to leave this town behind.
I have cried out to thee, and thou hast heard me. Ravenholm rests for no man. It is time to leave this town behind.
Also, the voice actor for Grigori does an incredible job. I honestly believe that this should be the guy Valve should hire if Grigori is ever to appear in another official Half-Life title. As in case some of you weren't aware, the voice actor of Father Grigori and the Fisherman of Lost Coast, James Rowley Jim French, passed away in 2017 at the age of 89. Rest in peace, you will forever be remembered. We start backtracking a bit, moving past the church, which garden we find burning. There isn't really a reasoning given to this. We just saw it fine a bit earlier in Raising the Bar Redux, though perhaps this is meant as a metaphor of Grigori's mental state, something that more evidence will point towards later on. I want to use this to point out some of the unique animations made for this mod, like the zombie trying to grab us through the fence. It's details like this that make the mod feel really alive. Now, obviously I can't go another second without mentioning the aesthetic of this mod. This mod is generally just designed really well in terms of map layout both visually and mostly gameplay wise, but the unique aesthetic really is a big selling point. It's an attempt to recreate the beta aesthetic of Half-Life 2, which it manages pretty well while adding even more detail. It really does go into deep detail on the architecture as well. Take a look at this room we find in the church, a tight room with a spiral staircase that leads to nowhere. It's not too uncommon to find seemingly useless architecture in old church buildings, remnants of what used to be useful in some way. A phenomenon also known as hyper-art Thomasson, or just Thomasson, a term coined by the Japanese artist Akasegawa Genpei in the 1980s. A name he gives to relics of structures that were once useful, then went on to become obsolete. Thomasson references the baseball player Gary Thomasson, who was signed for a record-breaking sum of money, though he got benched right before being able to set the league strikeout record. Akasegawa found this to be the perfect analogy for an object, part of a building, that was maintained in good condition but with no purpose, to the point of becoming a work of art. The name hyper-art comes from the fact that he believed these to be more art-like than art itself. These stairs are definitely a great case of a Thomasson. I'm not even sure if they were aware of what they were doing, but I found this to be a really great detail. Also listen to the great custom soundtrack we hear in this mod.
I should take whatever I can. When I leave this place, there will be no turning back.
I will continue playing the soundtrack in the background of this video as well. It's absolutely incredible. It's also in this church we find the second and also last new weapon we get in this mod, the nail bomb. This is actually a weapon that was planned to be seen in Half-Life 2 Episode 4 Return to Ravenholm. In case you somehow missed, at one point Valve contracted Arcane Studios to create their own Half-Life 2 episode, similar to how they contracted Gearbox to create Opposing Force, Blue Shift and Decay. This episode was set to feature Adrian Shepard of Opposing Force returning to Ravenholm and was basically finished before Valve called it off for seemingly no reason. Only somewhat recently did we get a lot more footage of this mod. The nail bomb scene in Salvation, even if changed a bunch from how it looked in Episode 4, is pretty cool. Another reference to Episode 4 is Grigori commenting on a headcrab next to a pot on a table if interacted with, saying,
"When I have made my escape, I shall have a decent meal."
The gameplay that we have seen of Episode 4 also features Grigori cooking up headcrabs in very much detail. I hope I wasn't the only one that got kinda hungry when seeing this. I must say that at this point I did half expect Adrian Shepard to show up somewhere in this mod.
Adrian?
Now to stop me from just highlighting everything I love, there are some negatives to this mod as well. For example, why can't we suit zoom? It's even called exactly that in the settings. Of course it's nice for gameplay, but lore-wise it doesn't make any sense. They did it great with the flashlight. You only find it in the church, not being able to use the flashlight before that moment. I would personally say they should either remove the suit zoom entirely from this mod, or make Grigori find some sort of advanced glasses or a helmet alongside the flashlight, that then enables the zoom. Hell, even one of these boys would do. Another thing I dislike is the glowing objects and hints placed over interactable objects. This isn't limited to this mod. I generally am not a big fan of this when it comes to Half-Life. Half-Life 1 and 2 went out of their way to keep the immersion as high as possible by never reminding the player that they are in a game. This goes as far as to knock players out of their immersion when Alex mentions a primary trigger and secondary trigger when explaining the gravity gun to Gordon, even if it is to argue that these triggers could be explained in lore to be on the gravity gun somehow, which probably is the explanation. The general hat hints in Gordon's visions were alright, given that he also has a suit zoom and thus some kind of helmet or visor. Implementing these things in Grigori's vision, which doesn't have any possible lore explanation, does kinda break immersion. I even disliked it in Entropy 02, probably the most popular and one of the best Half-Life mods out there. But there it could and was, as far as I know, later explained to be hints shown to the protagonist using some sort of system built into the Combine Elite's eye. But in this case, there is nothing. Grigori doesn't have anything on his eyes. You couldn't even explain it to be something Grigori imagines, as later on, items you have to find will glow through tons of walls. Let's move on though. After stocking up on ammo and weapons, we then venture into new areas of Ravenholm. The general gameplay loop of this mod will be the player trying to survive in Ravenholm while Grigori reflects upon the town and his life. As we move through the town, Grigori will start to have visions. These start off with seeing dark figures stalking you, quickly disappearing once you do see them. Later on it turns into full-on conversations with ghostly figures, featuring these creepy giant hands.
Do you still remember me? Or you seem to ignore me?
Annabelle, I wish not to hide from you, my love, but there is nothing more I could do.
So as it turns out, Annabelle is the name of a seemingly deceased wife or girlfriend of Grigori, a name he now uses for his gun. It's more than likely that of a girlfriend, as he doesn't wear a ring in RTBR. As far as I know, this is never mentioned in any official Half-Life media, but I do very much love this idea, even if now in hindsight it seems kind of obvious. Him being haunted by visions of her fits his character as well. We also every once in a while burn zombies alive in chambers, similar to what we saw in Half-Life 2 also. Grigori speaks about them, says their name, and how he hopes they are free after they get burned. Grigori is, as always, very nicely voiced.
I commend you to the light, my beloved Jacob, and wish you peace from this place of chaos. Go and join your family in the place of glory. Flee from the desertions of the Demiurge.
This is perhaps a lot more gruesome than Grigori might realize though, as there is a good chance the host underneath the headcrab is still alive somewhat. But whatever, Grigori doing Grigori stuff I guess. As you may have seen in some of the background footage, kicking has been added in this mod. While Entropy 02 wasn't the first to do this, it was the mod that I think proved to everyone that a melee weapon is kinda outdated. For anyone not into game design, in any game that requires you to break things, you need at least one kind of weapon that can infinitely deal out damage, as otherwise the player could find themselves stuck if they need to break something to proceed. This can either be a weapon with unlimited ammo or simply some sort of melee attack. Half-Life, and most mods of it, do this by having a melee weapon, in most cases a crowbar. And only once you've played a mod that features a distinct key for a kick will you notice how awful it is to have to switch to your crowbar each time you want to break something. You have most likely also found yourself breaking crates using your shotgun or similar in the past, simply because you didn't feel like changing to your crowbar. A kick mostly solves this issue. The kick in Salvation isn't that great, I may add. It serves its purpose of being said way of dealing infinite damage, but the kick generally is pretty janky. You will often miss your target, which is especially an issue with headcrabs, which a kick would be the best way to deal with those in real life, I think. It also has an issue of sounding and being really weak in damage, but incredible in knockback. Listen to this. And now look how far I can kick this entire metal shelf. This will probably be fleshed out in future versions. There were only a few occasions where I would describe myself as being lost. The game features a lot of alternate paths that look like the right way at first, but then turn out to not be. This is both great for being a detailed world, but can also disorient the player. But these were very few moments. To be clear, 2 moments. This mod is only 5 maps long and thus only like 2 hours at most. There are new enemies as well. There are the gnome/zombie assassins, which were also featured in RTBR. There are also zombie arms that try to grab us through the wall, which you can eliminate using a kick. Later there is this small Zen-infested area in the underground, something also seen in RTBR, where we find baby headcrabs, which weren't in the base game. They are just small enough to trigger my arachnophobia.
Nee, Junge, nee, nicht mit mir, nicht mit mir, nicht mit mir, nicht mit mir.
These are really annoying to fight and actually have me fighting using unconventional methods, throwing props. This actually gets me into one aspect that I really enjoyed. As mentioned at the start of the mod, you must scavenge and conserve your resources. They really weren't kidding. Ammo and health are both incredibly scarce, which will often lead to you having to actually think about your next move, not just running and gunning. I really enjoyed these small interactions. I once, for example, used props to trap a zombie torso in a room. It's these interactions you never really see in other mods, even though they're totally possible. Being forced to do them is really fun. The incredible detailed environments help with this. I mean, look at all these set pieces. This is incredible. We also revisit certain areas we saw previously. Adding new areas while still referencing the ones we already saw helps to make Ravenholm feel more like an actual place and not just a level you play through. One time I thought I managed to get out of bounds when I found out that this place actually had ammo hidden inside of it. This is incredible. We also get more visions of Annabelle.
You pretend they're still your children, but you hate their twisted faces. Their smiles turned into grotesque masks.
I pray my efforts will bring you comfort as I lay this town to rest, my dear.
These more clearly show that Annabelle, at least the version that is haunting Grigori, is just part of himself questioning all his actions. It's his self-doubt, personified. Perhaps exactly why he wishes to leave this town, and hopes to get rid of her. We also, at one point, have our actual path blocked by hands until we burn someone once more.
Jonathan, as the flames embrace you, let them be the conduit for your soul's emancipation.
We do also see zombies simply phasing through these hands though, which clearly tells us that these blocks are not actually there. Grigori can't walk through them, he's trapped in his mind. A compulsive need to burn the zombie before leaving. Seeing the zombies walk through them was a very nice touch. I think all of this very nicely represents Grigori's mental state. The arc is not yet finished though. At one point we hear and see a giant explosion that didn't seem to have much further relevance, I believe. It might be alluding to something yet to happen in RTBR or something, but I truly don't know. No clipping a bit, it seems to be a water tower? Kinda confusing, but hey, why not? Okay, so to get a bit nitpicky once more, here's a prime example of what I mean with areas not being that clear. You have this area here where this looks like a pathway. There is this path of fire with an interactable switch that doesn't do anything. There is this thing you can peek under, but the correct path is actually here above this barricade, of which we have seen tons of. Again, somewhat nitpicky. And I get they sometimes had to do this to squish in areas we already know, but certain areas do call for more readability. To balance it out again, the mod did one thing that I loved. If you notice how each time we had to burn a zombie the gas cans were glowing through walls, I mentioned that I didn't like this, and I still don't do so really, but I did something great with it here. After building up our expectation to run up to one, pick it up and go throw it at the zombie, we are now suddenly attacked by a zombie after we approach this one to find it actually be attached to said zombie. This was a cool play on expectations. Expectations they themselves built up. Clever work. We thus arrive at the shore, the area where Gon's adventure through Ravenholm started in RTBR. A cut area most of you probably know about somewhat through the old E3 tech demo of Half-Life 2. Sadly we do not find the Ichkvianianismia here. We then fend off tons of zombies by fueling a generator to open a water gate. This area felt the most unbalanced out of all of them. There simply were way too many zombies, which seems to be a common consensus, by which I mean Radiation Hazard also said this in his review. And thus I believe this will be cranked down a bit in a future version. The game ends with us rushing to a boat and escaping.
May the light protect us from the darkness we carry with us from Ravenholm. And may the light guide the newcomer's hand true as he strikes at the heart of evil. He may not be the savior I was hoping for, but perhaps he will do after all. My Annabelle, I carry you with me. I pray for the day I need not use your strength.
Again, kind of immersion breaking to have a cutscene outro, but generally I think it's fine enough as an intro or outro. I do wish it would have been out of Grigori's perspective instead though. We see Grigori escaping using a boat, finally leaving the town behind. There is still a lot to talk about though. Initially I was waiting for a post-credit scene, which this mod doesn't have. It did however glitch for me, which caused an accidental post-credit scene. The mod is supposed to take you back to the main menu and show you this background footage. For me, this was simply playing after the credits, which felt like an extra scene. I do think this is a good way to end the mod though. The reason being the following. Remember how I mentioned the church perhaps being a metaphor for Grigori's mental state? How the church was burning for no apparent reason? Well, in this, what I'm gonna call post-credit scene, we see Ravenholm on the following morning, now mostly empty. We see the church once more. The roof is broken in and light shines in. Something that I believe to represent Grigori finally breaking through his very bad mental state, now freed, letting light shine in. A pretty beautiful end to his arc. I'm unsure if this is what the developers intended, but that's the beauty of art, isn't it? I do want to recap a bit on the mod now as a whole. So the mod is generally incredibly good looking, but it does have some custom content created specifically for this mod. It does use RTBR as a base of course. I don't think this makes it any less good. This is the Half-Life 2 beta at its best, and I can only hope that this is a standard that future RTBR chapters will have. I also really enjoy the aspect of spin-off mods actually, especially with Grigori and especially in the beta. Since the beta takes place in a separate universe, it doesn't have to worry about the future installments at all. I do often get caught up on mods having to be canon, but hear me out as for my reasoning. Imagine I went ahead and made a mod about Father Grigori of Half-Life 2. It features him having a beautiful story like this mod does, and ends in him having a dramatic ending where he dies. Now imagine episode 3 releases and we see Father Grigori appear in there. It would kinda take the juice out of my mod, right? Unless of course I create a VR spin-off that retcons the ending of a previous work featuring a dramatic death. But yeah, this is why I believe having this take place in the beta is so smart. Raising the Bar have become the ones in the Half-Life community to kinda own the beta universe now, or as I like to call it, the BCU. I hope this is the first of many spin-off mods taking place in the beta. The gameplay of this mod is honestly incredible. Having an actually hard mod release is rare. Most mods are pretty much just run and gun. I think it's brave of them to release an actually hard mod, but it was much needed. I also heavily recommend each of you to check out Deathless. I at first thought it might be a bit too hard, but given this mod is only 5 maps long and does about 1 to 2 hours on a normal playthrough, it actually makes a lot of sense and will have you get the most out of this mod's awesome experience. The few times one might feel lost and the finale being a bit too hard are totally overshadowed by how great the rest is. The story is great as well. Grigori's character development was awesome to watch. I do have a bit of a gripe with it though. I must admit that it started a tiny bit uninspired. He seemed pretty much insane up until the last moment we saw him in RTBR. Then suddenly, once this mod starts, he has this realization out of nowhere that he needs to get out. Sure, I love the premise itself, but I would have loved some sort of scene that justifies this. Perhaps him breaking down after Gordon leaves, seeing tons of visions before awakening with this newfound realization. It would only be a small addition that in my opinion would make the story a lot more reasonable. Because otherwise, why didn't he just go down the elevator with Gordon? But yeah, again me nitpicking, what else did you expect? One of the best mods I've played in a while, 10 out of 10, subscribe and join the Discord, thank you for watching.